There we go. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I was all pumped and ready to go at the starting line, and then I realized my camera wasn't on. Do you know how many buttons there are I have to push to go live? You wouldn't believe it. You just literally wouldn't believe it. I still don't understand how I think all this podcasting and online video is like the most popular job in the world or something like that. Yet, there's a billion buttons to push. When will we get that go situation? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We just have to keep suffering with all the buttons and all the complexity, but that's fine. We're here. We're having fun. We're loving our life and we're not complaining. That's for sure. We're definitely not complaining. Let me get the old show up so I got the chat. Let me get the live chat going. Let me get it going. You're going to love the episode today. You're going to love today's show. We got a lot of good news. We think we're seeing around some corners today and excited to share it with y'all. We like to see around some corners. We got some fun, optimistic predictions. Check 2K. Good morning, Nolan and Great Awakening crew, and happy Friday. Indeed, it is Friday. We got good mornings. We got thanks MMK007 from Jack 2K. Good morning, Great Awakeners. In the beginning, God. Sometimes we don't always have answers. Keep seeking, knocking, and asking. You'll discover him. USA, USA. Good morning, Counting Crew. Peanut butter pie inbound for tonight. No way. Peanut butter pie, my absolute favorite. Now you got it in my head. Oh no. Oh no. What am I going to do? I got to tell my wife immediately. We need peanut butter pie this weekend. I'm going to try. If she's watching right now, wife, I'm having a incredible craving for peanut butter pie at the moment. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's make a peanut butter pie this weekend. They're the greatest dessert in the history of the world. Is all of the pump STRC? Maybe, but who cares? We love STRC. We're going to talk about it today. Did you see the product we have here at Roxham, by the way? I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, but we do now sell STRC on the Roxham platform. And you get the dividend paid at the end of the month in Bitcoin. So you'll get your 11% paid in Bitcoin. Pretty great product. I will be testing it out for sure. All right, I'm here. You can begin, says CB Van. We're ready to go. CB here. Let's start. Chatelet, do indeed. Nolan made it. Welcome. Yes, pardon me, guys. I'm having a lot of trouble with the time change, and I'm just missing all my cues, and I just haven't adjusted. Today, it's just the boring story of I looked up when my show was finally put together, and I said, oh, I have to go live in 5 minutes. And I hadn't even loaded the show yet or anything like that. It's just my internal clock is off. So there you go. We'll get there, though. We'll get there. Chatelet, escape the Matrix corner. Ain't got nothing on me. Smacks whack. Peanut butter pie is delicious indeed. All out pod today. I think so, Charlosky. Peanut butter pie, yummy. Hi, Nolan. Hi, Awakeners. We are getting a big winter storm in Wisconsin for the weekends. Lucky, lucky. Enjoy it, Noah. It's great. Damn, now I want peanut butter pie. After expensive research, that peanut butter pie factoid checks out. It is a mega fact. A mega fact. Hold on a second here. I owe you guys just a little more fake news this morning. I don't quite have enough now that I check my... As I said, all of my stuff is off, and I've got to make sure that I got what I need. One second. One second. Perfect. Perfect. I needed one more fake news story to tie the room together. I need to tie the room together. You know, the room was not tied together. Now we've tied it. We need a tied room. Almost ready. Almost ready. There we go. There we go. Now we're ready. Now we're ready. We are ready to go. Ready to rock and roll. Was missing one fake news story, which I knew existed, but didn't have it in my notes. And now we have the fake news story that we needed. So let's acknowledge that's a major sunrise on our hands. We're doing great with the sun. Sun, awesome, operational. Bitcoin running and pumping. I think we were at 72,000 US trash tokens the last time I checked. Let me have another quick look here. My watch complication is not all. Yeah, almost 73,000, 72,800 US trash tokens per Bitcoin. It's a steal. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Johnny Midas says, I'm sending love and noisy kites this morning. Nolan, don't send the kites. No, we're okay on kites. The wind died last night, totally. We've had 2 days of kind of gray skies here in Barbados. Very unusual, but it's welcome. It's been a little cooler and, mid 80s instead of high 80s, I guess. And but it's noticeable when you get used to the weather being the same every day. You notice when it's a little cooler. I needed a sweater last night. I think it was high 70s or something, and it was really strange because without a breeze, you just don't get any of the sound of the trees or anything. So it's just the frogs and the critters, and I'm not used to that. So I ended up getting, you can see my property here, and I was sitting outside and it was quite dark last night, and I ended up skedaddling in because I'm not sure if it was a monkey, but something landed, and it landed with a thump, and I didn't want to find out what it was. But normally I wouldn't even hear that. It could have been just a fruit coming out of the mango tree or something, but I was like, okay, time to go in. Time to go. My dog is gone. So it's not my dog, but the dog that stays at this house is gone for a couple of days. So I didn't have the guard dog or anything last night. And it's safe here in Barbados. It was just late night creepy crawlers in my brain, but it was so quiet compared to what it normally is that it surprised me. So there you go. There you go. And no kites. That's the good news. The kites dead in the air, dead kites. We love in our life. I'll take the quiet with the scary noises more than the perpetual weed whacker buzzing for days straight. It was a really bad one yesterday, and I'm glad it's dead. All right, let's get into some fake news. What are we hearing? What are the NPCs hearing? What do we got? We got this, everyone. We got this. This is a big story here. Female defectors say the MAGA movement has dropped the pretense of protecting women and now demands submission while advertising it will be cruel and fickle. That's what's going on, guys. I told my wife last night, I said, you know what? I'm not going to protect you anymore. I demand submission. And I'm advertising that it's cruel and fickle, wife. You've got cruel and fickle submission coming your way. So good. This one's good from Joy Reid. Joy Reid here. Let me see if the audio comes through. Joy Reid says that Congo would be the real life Wakanda if it wasn't for white people.
If there is a real Wakanda, it's the Democratic Republic of Congo. It has every mineral that you need to make iPhones, your cell phone,
the cobalt,
it has
gold,
every mineral,
silver,
gold,
copper.
everything.
Yeah.
It has every mineral in the greatest abundance on the entire planet. It should be the richest nation on earth.
It should be.
And instead, it's just completely exploited because of Europe and the West.
Yeah.
And these companies like Apple and all of these oligarchs around the world, they just view it as a place to plunder, like they've always viewed the continent.
They were doing
continent is just
so
a place
great
to plunder.
until the Belgians showed up. They had a steady diet of human meat. Things were going awesome. It was just amazing. In the Congo, and then people came and they ruined it. It was just, I mean, it was the best. Everyone knows the Congo was the best. And now white people have ruined it. They've ruined it. And now it's not Wakanda anymore. It's just a shithole. Too bad. We get this from the Philadelphia Inquirer. A Bucks County teen was internet-savvy entrepreneur. Now he's an alleged bomb maker behind the New York City terrible. Alleged. He's an alleged bomb maker. I thought it was a jar of fuses. Turns out it was a bomb, everyone. Turns out allegedly a bomb. Oh, this is great. We've got some apologies for this fake news story yesterday. We knew this was fake right away. FBI warns police in California that Iran wants to retaliate for U.S. attacks by launching drones against the West Coast, according to an alert reviewed by ABC News. Breaking. The FBI has warned police departments in California that Iran wants to retaliate on America. Update. The FBI has posted a fuller version of its alert to California authorities, which includes that the information was unverified. The latest version of the story has been updated with our full statement. So, not so much. We got this too. There was a couple attacks yesterday, Muslim extremist attacks. But wouldn't you know, Temple Israel was founded in 1941. And it's dedicated. One of the attacks happened at this Temple Israel. And guess what? It was dedicated to the formation of a Jewish state. That's why they got attacked. Terrible. Terrible. Now we got this. It's an old timer, but I want to bring it back because it's one of the all-time great fake news pieces. It's just perfect. It's going to set us up for the rest of our first little section here on the show. So you got to see this one. This is just an all-timer from MSNBC's Brian Williams. That's the guy who lies all the time and had to lose his job on NBC because he was lying, and then they hired him back. But here he is with the New York Times editorial board member, Mara Gay. And this was from years ago. Mara Gay, if you haven't heard her name in a while, she was the one who had this big debate in June 2024 on one of the networks about the difference between being too old and unfit for office. And she was talking and comparing Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And so she found the beautiful nuance between being too old and being unfit. And it turned out, according to her, about 2 weeks before the debate and Joe Biden, where everyone saw that he was retarded and his brain was just a bunch of mush, she has this whole great debate there. And she was able to isolate the truth that Trump was actually more unfit. And so here she is just a few years earlier talking about Michael Bloomberg. Classic NPC news here. One of the all-timers, forever going to be great.
But you see it as a possibility if he wants to spend $1 billion beating this guy, he could do it.
Absolutely. Somebody tweeted recently that actually with the money he spent, he could have given every American $1 million.
I've got it. Let's put it up on the screen. When I read it tonight on social media, it kind of all became clear. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads. U.S. population 327 million. Don't tell us if you're ahead of us on the math.
Don't tell them if you're ahead of them on the math. This is too good. Let them go with it. Don't help them with the math at all. They're great at math. Let them have the math.
He could have given each American $1 million and have had lunch money left over. It's an incredible way of putting it.
It's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing. It does suggest, what we're talking about here, which is there's too much money in politics, and it makes it difficult because what we want in
you see it.
There's too much. We don't know what to do. Everyone has $1 million. What do we do? What do we do? We're gonna be rich. It's too good. So I want to put all that in context, right? This is the New York Times editorial board. This is MS News or whatever it's called, MSNBC, MS Now. Here's one from CBC in Canada. Cascading effects of Strait of Hormuz blockage getting worse by the day. Energy and trade experts say it's getting worse by the day. Not so much. Not so much. So indeed, my predictions look like they're coming true about the Strait of Hormuz. So despite not being energy expert, I believe I've been able to predict what's going on pretty accurately. And I made many predictions yesterday that said that the Strait of Hormuz would not be a problem anymore and that things were mostly looking like, based on what I knew yesterday, going to be cleaned up and we weren't going to have any trouble. And I'll show you today. I think that's what's happening. I am still pretty confident in yesterday's predictions. And I'll go over the reasons why. But remember, I'm not an expert on oil, but you don't need to be, actually. You don't need to be an expert in any of this stuff. It's just economics. Economics will help you see around certain corners. They'll help you understand incentives, motivations. They'll help you understand that it's mostly psychological in the end as well. And that indeed World War III, more than ever, you will see today as a psychological and economic war. We're in the middle of it. We're about to win. We're about to win. That's the good news. And I'll go over those details today. But first, we have to have a conversation about the experts, about the people we like to laugh at every morning on our NPC news segments. Not NBC. They are the NPC news segments that we love. And I want to underline here, this is from Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman, right? So if you don't know who Richard Feynman is, he was a Nobel Prize winner and just a brilliant guy. A lot of folks in Silicon Valley idolize this fella. He was one of the great profs at Stanford for many years. If you go on Naval Ravikant's Twitter, you'll see him as his avatar. And I didn't really know Richard Feynman until I got into Bitcoin and I started hanging out with more Silicon Valley people. I basically had no connection to Silicon Valley at all until Bitcoin came into my life. And then I started traveling to Silicon Valley a lot in the early days of Bitcoin. It was a hotbed of Bitcoin activity in the earliest days between 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017 era. I stopped going to Silicon Valley after that once the block size wars really took off and the industry kind of atomized and crypto kind of took over what was going on in Silicon Valley. There's definitely Bitcoin connections there these days. I was back last year for the first time in many years and was pleasantly surprised. And I'm looking forward to being back in Silicon Valley again soon. But here's Richard Feynman talking about experts and how important it is to not listen to them and what it is they're actually shilling. So let me know if the audio comes through. I need to know.
Because of the success of science, there is a kind of, I think, a kind of pseudoscience that social science is an example of a science which is not a science. They don't do scientific. They follow the forms. You gather data, you do so and so forth, but they don't get any laws. Haven't found out anything. They haven't gone anywhere yet. Maybe someday they will, but it's not very well developed. But what happens is, at an even more mundane level, we get experts on everything that sound like they're sort of scientific expert. They're not scientific. They sit at a typewriter and they make up something like, food grown with fertilizer that's organic is better for you than food grown with fertilizer that's inorganic. May be true, may not be true, but it hasn't been demonstrated one way or the other. But they'll sit there on the typewriter and make up all this stuff as if it's science, and they become an expert on foods, organic foods, and so on. There's all kinds of myths and pseudoscience all over the place. Now, I might be quite wrong. Maybe they do know all this thing. But I don't think I'm wrong. See, I have the advantage of having found out how hard it is to get to really know something, how careful you have to be about checking the experiments, how easy it is to make mistakes and fool yourself. I know what it means to know something. And therefore, I see how they get their information. And I can't believe that they know it. They haven't done the work necessary, haven't done the checks necessary, haven't done the care necessary. I have a great suspicion that they don't know, that this stuff is, don't know, and they're intimidating people by it. I think so. I don't know the world very well, but that's what I think.
So Feynman,
because of the success of science.
Feynman did this in 1981. That's when this interview is from. 1981. He was able to make these incredible insights, and he was able to make this without the benefit of NPC News every morning. He was able to make these insights. And so it's important that we consolidate on our understanding of just what failures a lot of these experts are, given the systems that we have today, especially with the oil stuff. You're hearing all kinds of people with their expertise in oil. Adam Townsend said when the Biz show wants to put an oil expert on, they always go with some white cracker. Why? Why is that same network that always talks about raising minority voices, white supremacy, living on stolen land type of bullshit, why do they always give the panel seat to a cracker? It's because it's an influence op. They think you're being told some bullshit by a cracker. Gee whiz, it's got to be true. It's got to be true. That cracker said it. That's got to be true now. We all believe you. You got to be true. He says experts are anti-consequentials. Experts created the biggest bullshit COVID crisis in all of human history. They effectively shut down a $20 trillion economy. They inoculated themselves from criticism by employing the "he agrees with me" and the "science says that." Experts orchestrated the lies about global warming that they then imperceptibly morphed into climate change. Experts stripped Germany of nuclear. Explain to me how some petty analyst could even possibly understand even a sliver of global trade, oil/energy, blah, 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 and military in Hormuz and blah, blah, blah. You're an idiot if you listen to them. And indeed, we've had days and days of this bullshit about the fucking end of the world because stupid oil in the goddamn Strait of Hormuz is going to be plugged up and global uncertainty and all this stupid shit that we've been subjected to all week long. Now, it's been dramatic, and I indeed don't understand really anything about the global oil markets. That's not my forte. It's not something that I understand. However, I can do basic math. I understand incentives. I have a pretty good idea of what makes some of this economic world go round. And from my calculations and from what I've seen based on what's going on the ground in Iran now, and seeing through the layer of theater, I like to apply a layer of theater on top of a lot of what we see, and economic incentives. And I said to you guys yesterday, I don't think we're going to see in the next 24 hours big Strait of Hormuz actions anymore. I think everything we saw 2 days ago was part of the closing curtains for everyone to save a little face. And more I look at it, the more and more I'm convinced. Now, strange things happen. We're in the fog of war. There's a million possibilities that can come up. But just looking at the basics, looking at what Iran is doing, looking at what America is doing, looking at the amount of oil America has, looking at the amount of oil and the customers that Iran has, and saying, and then the capacity, the degraded capacity of Iran, saying, I think we're at the end here. And indeed, here are finally some of the most basic math calculations being done. We see indeed, here's the sort of worst case scenario based on months of closure. This would bring us into May 2026 would be the worst case scenario if it stays closed. Of course, we would understand how to get markets back on track after. So even that, Emma Ashford saying, honestly, though, it's far less apocalyptic than the literature on Hormuz disruptions would have assumed. So I guess that's something indeed. This is what it looks like if it's closed for the next 3 months. And not so bad. And indeed, all kinds of opportunities if that's the case. Remember, the United States is a net oil exporter. Closing the Strait of Hormuz hurts almost every other country more than it hurts the USA. I saw yesterday, indeed, and even the calculations right now, I think it's something like of the 20% of the world's oil that comes out of the Hormuz, most of it goes to China and India. The other two big customers are Korea and Japan. Japan has already announced their plans to move 100% to U.S. sources, so take them off the list. Korea is a huge ally of the United States. There's no effing way, America, especially now that they've learned about their weakness when it comes to boat manufacturing. And all the boats that they build in Korea are going to become more important than ever for the United States. There's no way at all America is letting Korea go with high oil prices. So it's up to just China and India after, who are the two most important allies of the United States, of Iran. So, or trade partners, I should say, not really allies. But so in my estimation, Iran just simply is out of cards. What you're seeing over the last 2 days, that bad day of strikes really was the closing curtains, the dramatic end, the third act of this battle. There's still trouble ahead. We'll get into more of the details. But I think we're headed for an oil glut now. I think everything that's been done in oil markets are going to set us up for the golden age over the summer when energy prices come down. I think you're going to be road tripping and flying for prices that you haven't seen in a long time. Inflation's coming, of course. We all know that, but there's things we can do about that. Wink, wink, nod, nod, fellow Bitcoiners. Here, indeed, Roman Helmet Guy goes on. But we can make it hurt even less. We can keep domestic oil prices cheap while also raising money for the federal government. If the strait stays closed, the U.S. government should impose an export tariff on oil, for example. Say the global price hits 150 trash tokens a barrel. Domestic oil producers right now make a profit of anything above around 65 U.S. trash tokens a barrel, but oil was trading around 80 before the war. So let's be nice to them. Put a 70 U.S. trash token export tariff on each barrel taken out of the country. The domestic oil companies will be indifferent between exporting oil and selling it domestically. And so the price in America will fall back to $80. This would help the American people, raise revenue for the federal government, allow domestic oil producers to continue making a very good profit, and remove all domestic political leverage that the Iranian regime is hoping to exert by closing the Strait of Hormuz. Win, 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 win. It's a no-brainer. The oil lobby will bitch, but we're fighting an oil war right now. What is making them massively wealthy? So maybe just shut the fuck up. I don't think it's even going to get there. Indeed, when you see what Trump is up to, here he is threatening. Sounds like,
Very good shape. The main thing is we have to win this thing, win it quickly, but win it. And there are many people, I'm just watching some of the news. Most people say it's already been won. It's just a question of when. When do we stop? We don't want to let it regrow. And ideally would like to see somebody in there that knows what they're doing. In other words, they can build the country. Now, one other thing, we can hit sections of Tehran and other places that if you do it, it'll be almost impossible for them to rebuild their country. And we don't want that. But we can hit electric, we could take apart their electric capacity within 1 hour, and it would take them 25 years to rebuild it. So ideally, we're not going to be doing that. Thank you very much.
So it sounds like this guy says, it sounds like hyperbole and bluster, but no, he's actually being quite literal. Completely possible that he could do that. I don't think he's going to have to. I think the pieces that he needs to rebuild are there. Indeed, leadership is becoming a much more important factor than any of this economic predictions and the experts and what's going on with global oil. Just looking at the terrain in Iran, looking at what's going on with the Strait, I'll share some details in a moment, but indeed, leadership is the most important quality right now, and judging from what's going on. I'll just show you. I'll skip ahead and come back to this. Actually, I don't like the order that I chose. Looking at what's going on with the Strait, Ian Bremner, who's not a fan, I guess you could say, of Trump, says the following: the Straits of Hormuz aren't completely closed. Iranian tankers are still passing through. We've been talking about that for days. Apparently, Iran is exporting more oil than ever through it to its partners. Here, Ian Bremner saying that they're bringing oil to China and oil revenue to the Islamic Republic. The United States could stop them, but that would antagonize China further and escalate the war. So here we are, and that is exactly what's not happening. So here's an Indian tanker that went through yesterday. So the Iranians are saying, as long as you ask for permission, you can come through. That's part of this whole face-saving third act. Everyone walking away saying they won. Everyone walking away saying they're the big winner. Here we see this is 135,000 metric tons of oil clearing the Strait of Hormuz yesterday, bound for India. India asked for permission and they got it. So that's a big deal here. They're going through the choke point. Here you can see China saying exactly what we've been saying, why they will not continue to attack the Strait of Hormuz. In a jaw-dropping twist, China's foreign ministry has publicly condemned Iran's missile and drone barrages on Gulf nations, calling them unacceptable attacks on civilians and non-military targets and demanding an immediate ceasefire. So again, my prediction yesterday was that the new leadership structure in Iran, which probably won't hold, we probably will still be getting the bad scenario. Remember yesterday I went through the different scenarios as articulated by Victor David Hansen. There was the good, which was there was some amount of rebellion that was resistance that rose up in Iran, and that we found a leader out of that, and that we could start rebuilding right away. That was the good. The bad was the Venezuela arrangement, where the political party, although heavily degraded, is still in charge and can get the oil flowing for the people. The ugly was we just peace out and say, see you later, thanks for all the fish. And so we're not going to do, it looks like we're not getting the good. I doubt we're going to get the ugly, but it looks like we got the bad, which isn't so bad and should cascade into something different as we go forward. But yesterday when I read that we were incentives and what's going on, it was not that I know anything about oil flowing, not that I know anything about ships and capacity, because I don't. What I do know is that yesterday, when we found out the Iranians had re-established their command over the military, and that orders were now going to be flowing down to the military again, they weren't just operating blindly. There was an attempt to reestablish military hierarchical command, and that the order to shoot everyone was gone, and that the apology that they gave to the neighbors was sincere in the sense that they were going to change tactics, that everything we saw yesterday was kind of the dramatic salvo at the end so that everyone can walk away saying, we won, we got our way. And that is what I believed. And so I'm going on nothing more than that. And a bit of the economics around the oil. But I do believe that's the case. I do believe that is what is going on now. And so it's important to underline, of course, that now there's apparently the leader gave a statement yesterday, but he might be dead, right? So there's reports today that the guy who came in, according to Mossad, he is dead. Now, not sure. Yesterday, we saw this note here as well. Iran's new supreme leader pledged to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, but Iran's UN envoy said the opposite. Who is really speaking for the Islamic Republic at the moment? Adobe's long-serving chief executive is departing against the backdrop of accelerating disruption from AI on Adobe's subscription software. Guess who the CEO found? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about the Adobe thing. What I do know, though, is that the Strait of Hormuz is likely, based on what we saw from the Indians and the Chinese, it is likely completely open, and there's going to be, not completely open, open to Iran's partners. But again, go back to who the customers of the Strait of Hormuz are anyway. and it seems fine. That's exactly who should be buying the oil from the Strait of Hormuz. That's exactly who's meant to get the oil from the Strait of Hormuz, and so they're going to get the oil from the Strait of Hormuz. America doesn't need it. The other two American allies, Japan and Korea, remember I said the four biggest users of the Strait of Hormuz: China, India, Korea, Japan. Korea and Japan will be completely serviced by the United States without any difficulty, I don't think, given the Venezuelan oil access and given the surplus that America has and the amount of storage capacity that lasts for months that we've got. We should be fine. So oil indeed hasn't spiked at all in the last 2 days, and I expect it to not spike anymore. Unless something crazy happens, which could, right? We don't. This is still fog of war, so I'm basing my predictions solely on what I'm seeing from the flow of traffic, the allies, and the economic incentives that are there, as well as the fact that we do have this new Iranian regime that looks exactly like the scenario that I gave yesterday, and that would probably be acceptable to the Iranians for now. They did survive, and in a very degraded form, of course. So, just that's what I think is going to happen. So it looks like, as of now, Trump has gotten exactly what he wants out of this scenario. He's broken the threat of Iran, and now we can probably move straight into the golden age, which is a economic and psychological hurdle, not a military one. This was the last military hurdle, I believe, to the advancement into the golden age of energy abundance and a new financial system. And I will show you today how it is all coordinating to be so and to be that way exactly. Now, just give me 1 second. So experts failing, news sources failing, but we're getting a better sense indeed of the energy matrix in the world, energy literacy going through the roof as we speak every single day, because energy is the big pivot point. It's where you see the economic forces coalescing. It's where you see the economic forces coalescing, and economics and energy have a big role in the psychology around World War III. And it's why I even believe that, people seeing more and more the so-called fight on the right, that this whole war effort has been really a psychological operation against Trump's supporters. I think even in general, that's where things are headed. Like, you can't, the people who are still believing the, let's call it, left-wing point of view or globalist point of view, these folks are just suffering from mental illness now. There isn't any real point of even arguing with them. The real political argument, and you need political arguments. You can't go forward everyone believing the same thing. I don't think you need to be saturated in political arguments, but there should be points of division and discussion in a civil way. And I've been saying from the minute that you first saw the Trump-Elon fight almost a year ago, last May, which was the beginning of Trump is in the Epstein files, and you had all that conversation. I've been talking about that kayfabe for a long time. What I said was if it wasn't kayfabe, I said at the time, because we didn't know if it was kayfabe, my kayfabe theory has proven to be mostly accurate. But when I said, even if it isn't kayfabe, what you're seeing here is the confidence that a lot of people in the MAGA world and the populist world are having to be able to argue amongst themselves. The future of politics, the future of division in politics, are what you're seeing already in the populist MAGA camp. I don't believe the Democrats survive this. So you still need arguments, and they will mostly be the fault lines that you're seeing within MAGA now going forward, which is a much more healthy way to debate. I think most people in MAGA aren't even really bothering debating left-wing folks anymore. They're just recognizing it not as political opinions, just as prompt engineering and mental illness and all of these problems. Because if you don't have economic literacy, if you don't have financial literacy, if you don't have media literacy, there's literally no way to make sense of what's going on in the world. It's all just feelings and all the rest of it, and moral high ground stuff, and none of that works anymore. It's all useless. So the actual fault lines are being seen in this division in MAGA. And I think on this show anyway, we're going to be treating those divisions between MAGA as the actual news, not left-wing and right-wing news anymore. We've been doing that for quite a few years, but It's kind of the same thing all the time when you're talking about the left-wing mentalists. We'll still have time for them, right? We still have a bit of time for them. But the real issue are what forces are dividing the MAGA folks, because as we'll see as we go forward, dividing the populist base seems like the globalists' only way to get any traction, to try to break that apart. So leadership, more than ever, leadership that is both energy and economic literate, is what matters, and no other qualities really matter anymore. You can reduce our politics down to those constituent elements and probably have enough of a read on the situation to move forward. That's why when you look at what Trump did here and the leadership that he's shown in Iran, you can start to see why it was important indeed. And here's a quote from just showing that leadership again. We are totally destroying the terrorist regime of Iran, militarily, economically, and otherwise. Yet, if you read the failing New York Times, you would incorrectly think that we are not winning. Iran's navy is gone, the air force is no longer, missiles, drones, and everything else is being decimated, and their leaders have been wiped from the face of the earth. We have unparalleled firepower, unlimited ammunition, and plenty of time. Watch what happens to these deranged scumbags today. So I think we're all being set up for the third act of this movie. It's about to come to an end. They've been killing innocent people all over the world for 47 years, and now I, as the 47th president of the United States of America, am killing them. What a great honor it is to do so. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The Misfit Patriot says, for over 2 decades, I've waited for a president who have had the balls to go in and fight this the right way. No nation-building agenda, no motive on natural resources and a blood for oil trade-off, no forever war to enrich the military-industrial complex, just a simple and clear directive to kill as many terrorists as it takes until they realize chanting death to America and plotting against this country will no longer be tolerated. Trump isn't the reason I support the war on Islamic terrorism. He's just the one who did what I always knew was necessary, cut off the head of the snake. We've had a 9-12 mentality about the threat of Islam since 9/11 because I kept my promise. I never forget. And you're seeing that leadership come through, right? Remember, look at Europe right now without this leadership, without this understanding. Here's Prof. Sainouge reminding us all of when they laughed at Trump. Remember when they laughed at him at the UN in 2017? One of the most hilarious mistakes in the history of experts. Here's Prof. Sainouge saying what is up.
Vladimir Putin is threatening to embargo natural gas shipments to the European Union. This could double gas prices in Europe, sparking a recession chasing the rest of Europe's heavy industry to America and leaving European households facing thousands in electric bills. Perhaps Europe should not have closed their coal plants to entertain climate activists. Earlier this week, Vladimir Putin took advantage of the Iran war to tighten the screws on Europe, using that, quote, perhaps it would be more profitable for us to stop supplying the European market in favor of other, quote, interesting markets, presumably China and Asia. The context here is natural gas is a much smaller market than oil, about $150 billion a year exported compared to $1.3 trillion for oil. But it's also an essential market with about half of natural gas going to electricity generation, so gas is much cheaper than oil. The balance going to heavy industry, so steel, chemicals, fertilizers, and household heating. The problem is natural gas is much more rigid than oil, which you can put on a boat and aim anywhere. In the case of gas, it's limited by infrastructure because natural gas requires cooling to negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit to make it liquid, unlike oil that's liquid at room temperature. This means there is not a global price for natural gas, it's different prices everywhere. So you've got Henry Hub in the US, the Japan-Korea marker, JKM in Asia, and TTF in Europe. Now Henry Hub US prices have barely moved on the Iran war since the US is a net exporter of LNG. So oil moved 50% depending on the hour, but Henry Hub only moved up 10%. It's a very different story in Asia and Europe. TTF was $32 on the eve of the war, spiked to $54, and now are around $49. So that's up around 50%. The problem is the Middle East supply that spiked Europe's gas prices only represented about 8% of Europe's supply. But Russia is currently supplying almost twice that. In other words, 8% of supply spiked prices by half, and now Putin is threatening to triple that hit. This would gut what's left of European manufacturing, especially energy-intensive industries like steel, cars, and building materials, as well as chemical-intensive industries, including fertilizer for...
So Europe in trouble, more or less, right? And you can see here that this, leadership and why it's important, right? Here's Merkel. She'll be getting an award for all of her hard work, right? Fisher King says, LOL. She's the single most destructive Euro politician of the last 25 years. She promoted policies that are deindustrializing Germany and migration policies that are making Germany and other countries unrecognizable. So it's perfect that worthless Eurocrats give her a medal. It sure is perfect. It just shows exactly the contrast. And here you can see from Besant to Trump taking decisive steps to promote stability in global energy markets and working to keep prices low as we address the threat and instability posed by the terrorist Iranian regime. To increase the global reach of existing supply, U.S. Treasury is providing a temporary authorization to permit countries to purchase Russian oil currently stranded at sea. This narrowly tailored, short-term measure applies only to oil already in transit and will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government, which derives the majority of its energy revenue from taxes assessed at the point of extraction. President Trump's pro-energy policies have driven U.S. oil and gas production to record levels, contributing to lower fuel prices for hardworking Americans. The temporary increase in oil prices is a short-term and temporary disruption that will result in a massive benefit to our nation and economy in the long term. So, and here's Germany doing it again, right? Merz opposes U.S. decision to ease Russian oil sanctions for global energy stability. Germany already suffers from flawed energy policies, yet Merz pushes the total disaster. Ruining Germany and its economy seems to be his specialty. So they're making the same mistake again in Germany. Don't do the Russian thing. Remember what I've been saying, that this war is actually between this old world infrastructure, all of these people who have had as a nightmare the worst case scenario of all time for 200 years has been if America and Russia come together and have an economic partnership. That has been the worst case scenario for all of these bloodsuckers, and that is exactly what's happening. So it looks like the Strait of Hormuz is going to open. It looks like the United States is going to be able to have its economic relationship with Russia, and those forces together mean that the economic war that we find ourselves in, I think, is coming to a close, and that the whatever you want to call it, deep state, bloodsuckers, and all the rest are going to run out of steam as we go forward. Now, indeed, to go back to my scenario B for Iran is happening. Well, what's going on here? I'm back. So indeed, just as one more little bit of proof here that the scenario B is says no audio, but I think that was the last one. Yeah, I wasn't playing the audio on that. No, I've got on the tweet. No, I think, sorry, my producer is talking to me. Was connection So, oops. So again, to go back to my scenario B that I predicted yesterday, here you've got this fella who's just walking amongst the people while the Supreme Leader, who's probably dead, the president is visible, the Supreme Leader is not. Iran's public face now is the man Israel deliberately kept alive because they think he's negotiable. So indeed, I think you are going to get this Venezuela scenario, and that guy comes in, and that you've got this formula, I guess you can say, for what looks like mostly peace, but is really just the neutralization of any potential Iranian sabotage over the coming golden age in the next few months. So I think, again, the Iranian situation is going to lose steam. Now, the other part that we were worried about when the war first started was the sleeper cells in America, and that it would attract a type of retaliation. Now, we've seen 4 separate terrorist attacks, let's call them that, in America in the past week, I guess. And none of them look like sleeper cells. So just to be clear, they are definitely terrorist attacks, but none of them look trained. There were 2 yesterday. None of these attacks have been trained terrorist sleeper cells. You know this because real sleeper cells won't be so incapable and will involve multiple tactics and likely not solo missions. You will know if the real ones pop out, and this ain't it, Jack. But it is still distressing to see. We had the Austin shooter. We had the New York City bombers. We had the Old Dominion shooter and the Michigan synagogue shooter yesterday. These 2 were yesterday. Some pretty gruesome details came out, indeed. I'll get to those in a second. Jack Posabik saying here, it isn't so much that these are sleeper cells directly working for Iran, but these are radical migrants that have been led into our country with no vetting. They need to be dealt with by mass deportations, 2 in one day, mass deportations, no more games. And indeed, here was one of the fellas killed yesterday at Old Dominion. Pretty incredible life this guy had. Looks like a great guy. The crazy story is that he was actually the person who killed him was killed, but with the bare hands of this guy's students. So this guy's students and actually beat him to death. So some people think it's funny. I don't think it's funny necessarily, but there's an irony to it, I guess. So that guy's dead, and he was beaten to death by the hands of these folks. So, and then we have other details, right? This guy, got out of jail. He got out of jail, even though he'd already pledged his support for ISIS just a few years ago. What? So that's why you've got this entire system in disrepute right now. That's why you've got this entire system that nobody believes. I mean, even look at the drone story yesterday, right? The drone story yesterday, I think, proves what's going on right now, and that the main activity is about dividing Trump's base more than it is about actually protecting America or trying to find systems that would stop any kind of attack in America. So that California story indeed was a slopaganda. Joel Pollack says, people asked me about this, and I said it was highly unlikely that Iran would attack California. The only coherent part of the Iranian strategy is to amplify domestic political opposition against Trump. So why would the regime do something to unify Democrats with the president? Indeed, we've got major problems with American domestic division. And American domestic division is really the target. It's why I think that, this show focusing on ops that are designed to divide MAGA supporters is probably more important and useful for folks than just making fun of all of the sludge people that are around. So, as much as I think the sludge people are terrible, let me just find, there's one more here that I wanted to find from PDB because it's going to help us understand what's going on. Where's my PDB notes? I had a really good one from PDB, and I now don't know where it went to. Where the hell is it? Where is the stupid thing that I thought I had? Well, I didn't have it in my notes, but anyway, you had a real PDB one, basically saying that there's, people still believing in Russia collusion out there. So there is a lot of work to do when it comes to winning this fight for the psychology, because it is now a psychological war. The economic component is there, and indeed the psychological component is the most pressing issue right now. So when Pollock says that, you have to just analyze that California story through this matrix. Indeed, the most effective psychological tactic left is not arguing left versus right. It's creating divisions within MAGA and making sure the MAGA folks don't have a unified way of dealing with any of the problems. Now, again, I'll go back. I think it's a good sign that MAGA is able to debate and not really worry about leftists. It's very healthy that there are debates in some ways within the populist MAGA movement, within Trump's base. But that is the only thing that can be done now. It's not pumping Democrats up. It is just getting MAGA folks to fight, because the demoralization campaigns that I've been talking about for a long time are the most important way to penetrate MAGA, and it is the most obvious tactic that has any traction right now. And indeed, Dan Cotter and Cernovich both saying it here. Can't get demoralized. It's way better than the first term. A lot can still work in our favor. Some guys will need to pony up. Elon can't do it all. Dan Cotter says, even if it wasn't better, which it is, the only people who win with a demoralized populist right are the worst people on the face of the planet. The only way out is through. There is no magic bullet that solves everything at once. It's going to be a lifelong grind. So I disagree with that. I don't think it's going to be a lifelong grind at all. Because the thing that is going to bring Americans together, the thing that is going to get off of this point of view, the thing that is going to get people to be able to overcome some of this psychological inertia and some of this intra-MAGA debating is just winning. Chemistry comes from winning. Winning is the number one way to get rid of all of these problems. And I don't mean just winning the war. That's not even really important. That's not going to be seen as a win for many people. The real win, the one that will bring psychological relief, the one that will bring unity to Americans, the one that will allow Americans to go forward confidently, is the golden age. Winning the economic war will actually solve the psychological war. And so we've got this media problem, we've got this psychological problem that's going on, and the way to solve it is economics. So we see that we're not going to have, as far as I can tell, any kind of apocalyptic energy scenario. We're not going to have a global market meltdown because worst case scenario, oil goes to 150 US trash tokens a barrel. And it won't be that in America, because America is 100% self-sustaining and getting more resources. You see what's going on in Cuba. You see what's going on in Venezuela. There's only more oil coming online in the United States. So the whole fight now comes down to economics, because economics will solve the psychological issue. I don't believe the Iranian situation can be held over the world economy anymore. That looks solved. So we are going to get a pretty direct highway to energy abundance. Energy abundance is going to solve a lot of this demoralization. And a lot of the demoralization can be solved indeed by just winning. And that's why when we think of World War III as a psychological and economic war, it's becoming more explicitly so. Here we see the Pentagon recruiting bankers from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan for a new economic defense unit, according to Semaphore. Pentagon mobilizing Deal Team 6 here. Again, this is why you're going to see, I think, even looking in these documents here, right? We've got this new, the Department of War, exactly what the West needs, says Beth Jezos. CCP is executing financial warfare to systematically erode the West's capacity for self-defense and sustenance. Time to weaponize our financial system to fight back. And as that's happening, you have the cyber strategy document released this just 2 days ago on March 11th. And what does this soft war strategy, now that they're bringing in economic actors into the Pentagon to wage an economic war? Remember when I first said World War III was an economic and psychological war years ago? And it was like, maybe. No. Here it is explicit. Trump's cyber strategy for America versus soft war. There is significant conceptual overlap between these two documents. Jason Lowery published this in 2023, and shortly after, it was banned for a time. Trump issued this in March 2026, continued below here. Core commonality, power projection through infrastructure. Lowery's central argument: power in the digital age is projected through physical enforcement of rules over cyberspace infrastructure. Trump's cyber strategy says almost the same thing in policy language. The U.S. will use the instruments of national power to shape cyberspace outcomes, not just defensive IT tools. Common thread: cyberspace isn't abstract. It's a geopolitical battle space tied to real-world force. Deterrence through cost imposition. Lowery's software Bitcoin equals a software system that enforces property rights through energy-backed computation. Its deterrence comes from making attacks physically expensive. A cyber strategy emphasizes raising adversaries' costs through offensive operations and systemic disruption. Both center on deterrence economics, not just defensive mechanics. Cyberspace as a dominion of warfare. Lowery frames cyberspace as analogous to land, sea, air, space governed by force and logistics. Cyber strategy explicitly treats cyberspace as an operational domain tied to military and economic competition. Both reject the internet as neutral platform framing. Infrastructure dominance as strategy. Lowery says Bitcoin mining equals control over digital territory via energy expenditure. Cyber strategy says focus on securing data centers, AI stacks, supply chains, telecom, and energy infrastructure. Same logic: control the substrate, control the system. Machine speed conflict. Lowery predicts conflict migrating toward automated enforcement systems. Cyber strategy calls for AI-enabled cyber tools, agentic AI for defense and offense. Both envision machine versus machine geopolitics. What's interesting, the overlap strongly supports the thesis I've been talking about. Energy, compute, and capital allocation are converging into the same strategic layer. Lowery frames Bitcoin as digital energy storage, time enforcement, and a geopolitical stabilizer. The cyber energy frames AI plus infrastructure as economic engines, defense systems as sovereign tools. They're two views of the same macro shift. Both frameworks argue that future geopolitical competition is about controlling the physical and economic enforcement layer of cyberspace, not just information flows. And at the same time, as all of this is happening, the Department of Energy comes around and publishes this yesterday. The Department of Energy announces $1.9 billion investment update critical grid infrastructure and reduce electricity costs. Calling all grid nerds, says Melton Demir, exciting time to be working on hardware, software, and marketplaces that will make the grid more resilient. And this is actually how you win. This is how you win World War III. You follow this formula, and isn't it amazing that on the same days that we're seeing all this trouble with the financial system, JP Morgan marking down loan portfolios of private credit groups, many people in finance don't appear to appreciate what happened yesterday when JP Morgan marked down collateral and cut available credit to their private credit clients. The engine of money creation just went the wrong way. Other banks will follow quickly, and money and credit will tighten, causing a slow-moving ripple effect throughout the system unless it's offset by something else. At this stage in the economic cycle, good luck. Simultaneous to this private credit thing going on, you see Michael Saylor's STRC actually showing how yield and this product can work. It looks like this is going to make a big difference in the market. Strategy has already accumulated. This was just yesterday, watching all the buys in Bitcoin come through. This is just one video. This has continued throughout the day. And so as you're seeing America embrace cybersecurity strategy, economic warfare, and you're seeing the old system crash and you're seeing the new system line up, right? You're seeing this from strategy. This is the new system. This is the Bitcoin buying going on right now from what people are calling the iPhone moment for MicroStrategy, or for strategy, for Michael Saylor's iPhone moment. So you're seeing the cybersecurity strategy come out. You're seeing the energy dominant strategy come out. Those are the things that are going to bring Americans together. It is this stuff. This is how you end up creating the new world. And of course, leadership is a part of it, right? Trump has been talking about this stuff for a long time. He's taken plenty of risks over the last couple of years to make this happen. But now that we see all of this coming, now that we can compare to the real war that's going on, the psychological and economic war that's going on, now that we see the economics come into clear view, we can really tell that the true fight is between the old economic system. That's why we saw this insurance thing in the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to cripple Trump. It was supposed to create a huge boondoggle for him. It was supposed to be economic calamity, which would tear the MAGA world apart. There's already those lines of division, which, again, going back, I think are healthy. MAGA should be confident enough to have debates inside of MAGA and inside of people who want change. You can't just keep arguing with mentally ill people. You have to have real arguments with people who have real opinions. And, you know, I have time for people who say all these things. Trump is under the thumb of Israel. It's normal to have these worries. There's a lot of people out there saying it, but I don't see it. I don't see it in the patterns. I don't see it in the relationships. I don't see it in the economics. But at least it's not white people bad and energy is bad and you're going to kill the planet if you don't make sure if you don't keep the data from the mollusks from 3,000 years ago consistent with the current shoreline in Zimbabwe that we measured 100 years ago, and all of this stupid shit that we hear from the global warming and the pessimist crowd. So seeing this stuff and seeing that we're actually in a battle for leadership, right? Not necessarily economic or political systems. We're in a battle for leadership around economic systems. And that's the most important fight that's going on right now. It's energy literacy. It is financial literacy. Both of those things will fix the media literacy after, because of the flows of money as we go forward. And you can see, just compare everything that Trump has said, everything that Trump is doing, everything that we see on the ground in the Strait of Hormuz, everything that I think we're about to see in Iran. This is not going to be a forever war. I think it's over. I think it's over. I don't see where this is going. We're getting massive amounts of cheap energy coming and massive amounts of economic productivity as a result of this energy becoming cheaper. Now, just compare everything we hear from Trump, compare everything he says about, I'm the first president to go after this, to do it. Other people could have done it. Him talking about energy abundance being an energy superpower, what he's already done on the continent. You have to reverse the whole chain of events to understand what Trump has actually done here. Venezuela happened when it happened so that Iran can happen. Cuba is about to happen. You're going to see all of these changes very shortly. Now compare all of this stuff to the true enemy, the globalist sludge people from the old banking systems, and you see them failing already. You see them locked out of any of these conversations, completely uninvited, completely unoriginal. Remember, the thing that I loved about Trump from the very beginning was his way of speaking, his way of not being politically correct, not being on script. And again, I from the moment Trump got the teleprompter, I said the show quality went down. And that was when he became candidate Trump in 2016, or presidential candidate Trump. When he was Republican candidate Trump and he never used the teleprompter, that was peak Trump, right? That was the greatest Trump we've ever had. But he still does that a lot, and I think he'll do it more as we go forward. But just compare him now to one of these montages. These are my favorite montages, right? These are the prime ministers of the UK, Australia, and Canada all reading from the exact same script. Now compare this to Trump and just think about persuasion. That's all you have to see now is persuasion. Trump is out there offering wealth and success to all kinds of builders. This is the American system, and we're not going to let all of these institutions and globalists and all the things that have happened over the years affect that. Iran was a product of these people. Iran was a fake country. Israel might be a fake country in the same way, right? I continue to believe that Israel was created by these British folks in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration in order to have this dramatic stage to divide people. Go back to the beginning of the American story. The more I look at what's happening in the world today, the more I analyze what's going on in the world today, the more I see that England never got over, or the UK never got over the American Revolution. The American Revolution was an existential threat to that system because it's extractive. It was a banking system from the very beginning. And because the Americans did what they did, they were about to teach the French to do it. The British came in and created the psychological war that was the French Revolution. They created a complete and total disaster. All of it was fake news. Marie Antoinette never said anything like "let them eat cake." That was propaganda, fake news from that time. They funded both sides in the Napoleonic Wars, realized through the Lord Palmerston type of foreign policy, the best way for a small place like the UK to continue to be banking, extractive, third-party, scammy systems was to ensure that people were fighting. The psychological component of the economic war was from the very beginning. We just didn't understand. We did not understand it. And they were able to be effective because the nation states which they captured were the effective vehicles of both brainwashing through national consciousness and national brainwashing, as well as the economics and the cost of violence when they're able to consolidate power with these centralized military systems. So you end up seeing this psychological and economic war play out. That's what the Civil War was in the United States. The Civil War was one of these division things, and it brings you right to the Balfour Declaration after World War I, which was entirely about financial systems. The actual war had collapsed down to those very base issues. How do you finance war? And after the Balfour Declaration came out, Israel and then the borders that were created amongst the rest of the Middle East were all designed from the end of the Ottoman Empire through to have a constant and perpetual theater of division. You know, one of the things that I've said to a lot of my Emirati friends and Middle Eastern friends, who are totally down with peace with America, they get it. They want it. They're partners. We see them today suffering. That's why I didn't like people getting upset about the Mamdani thing in the New York mayor's office, because there's plenty of things to complain about Mamdani, right? It's like I say with Trump. The most effective thing I've ever said about Trump, for people who don't like Trump, is when they start complaining about Trump, it's almost always mind reading. They always revert to, I know what he's thinking, right? Trump is he's just a bully. He just is in it for himself. He's a narcissist and all these things. That they always go to that, right? And so I say, well, just there's enough to complain about with Trump. You don't need to believe you can mind read him. Just complain about the real things, not the things you're hallucinating. And I say the same with Mamdani, right? Complain about the real things. Don't hallucinate that it was a humiliation ritual and it was a power play. And even if it was, why does it shouldn't bother you? Who cares? We get it, right? It's okay. Doesn't affect you, doesn't change the price of Bitcoin, doesn't change the price of oil. It doesn't bother me. If people want to do it, that's fine. There's plenty to complain about when it comes to Mamdani. You don't have to invent things. So it looks like that everything we experienced from World War I through World War II, when I tell my friends over there who I said, they're taking bombs for us, that's why I think it's inappropriate to complain about Mamdani. These guys are living through difficult times in Bahrain and Qatar, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And, I've been on the phone with my friends over there. They're happy to do this. They want the golden age. They're ready to get through this. They're ready to suffer in these minimal ways in order to move forward in a better world. And so when you listen to them, I've had many conversations with them about Israel, and I'll always tell them, I'll say to them, I think in the end, when we understand what's happened in history, you're going to want to preserve Israel more than me, probably, because what you're going to see is some of the biggest victims of this psychological operation. The Israelis themselves being involved in all of this stuff, being created just as a propaganda country in order to help maintain a level of division in the world, and to put them in a position where they could never have peace, where they would always be fighting, where everything was designed to create a divisive theater that would keep people from understanding what was really going on in the world. What was really going on in the world is these scumbags here operating on their talking points system, in their old world fake way of understanding the world, all of their stupid UN WEF playbooks, right? All of their agenda, don't use energy, climate change, open borders. Just look at how coordinated these people really are. These are the leaders. This is the true World War III. This is who Trump is truly fighting, not the Iranians. The Iranians were a product of this. They were a product of this. Israel today is just a country that has the same troubles that America has, except they don't have a Trump. They don't have good leadership. Netanyahu is all over the place. He's completely compromised in a million different directions. He's been around for a long time, so it's probably impossible for him to not be compromised at this point. It's just the American system, the American divisions in Israel, but more pronounced with a weaker populist side. So imagine you were in America and the Democrats still had way more amplification and capacity than they do. That's what you're dealing with in places like Canada and Europe and Israel. And that's why they still have these scumbags running them. Now, Netanyahu's not part of this gang, but he's not a strong enough and independent enough character any longer to, whether that's his fault or not, I don't really know what he's been doing with his whole life, but doesn't look like he's able to keep the country together. And has his own problems. But this is what we're dealing with. This is the true fight. It's between these talking points. It's between this lack of enthusiasm, between this demoralization versus the golden age type of optimism that is just around the corner. That is here. That is here. We're in it. We're in the golden age already. It's just harder to perceive because this thing isn't quite dead yet, but it's about to die. And it's going to die because look at their persuasion. Look at what we've noticed. Look at how weak they are. I mean, it's just I got to make sure the audio comes through, so I'm going to start it again. I suspect I'm not going to get any audio on this, but now I will. So here we go. This is it. This is what we're up against. This is the real war.
We've seen a devastating rise in Islamophobia.
We must stamp out the hate, fear and prejudice that drives Islamophobia and division in our society.
Because of the hatred fueled by ignorance that is still a lived reality for far too many Muslim Canadians.
The surge in Islamophobia is simply appalling.
The targeting of Australians based on their religious beliefs is not only an attack on them, but it's an attack on our core values.
The values of community, of generosity, and yes, of sacrifice.
Leaving people feeling fearful and unsafe in their own country.
Australians should be able to feel safe and at home in any community.
Our Canada is a diverse country. We can pray differently. We can gather in different places of worship, but all of us come together, all of us must come together around the values of Eid.
I'd like to thank Muslim organisations and mosques who work tirelessly to raise awareness and shine a light on the scale of Islamophobia.
A substantial contribution to help tackle Islamophobia and focus on promoting acceptance and inclusion.
Ibrahim or Abraham, Ishmael or Isaac, the lessons and values of Eid are the same.
It's just the same thing every single time. This is the actual fight. These guys are not, none of this is real. This is just to get people to fight. This is division. This is what's going on. And so this is the most important fight that's happening. Now, I don't have a rational fear of Islam. What I fear is the brainwashing that's gone on, which I don't see in the Gulf Coast. I only see it coming from academia. I only see it coming from the West. Remember, Dubai has banned, United Arab Emirates will not pay for young people to go to school in the UK anymore because they will be radicalized. Remember, the history of this whole area is the Muslim Brotherhood went through and became the major educators. You know, Osama bin Laden, his mom was a Shia. She was from the Iranian world. She's from the Bashar al-Assad realm in Syria. That whole, that Syria had its connection to Iran because of the Shia connection between al-Assad and those tribes that were there, those people that were actually more Persian than they were Arab. Osama bin Laden's mom, right, was from that world. Osama bin Laden's father was a typical Muslim from the area. He wasn't preaching Islamic supremacy. He was charged with really important work, which was the revitalization of the Muhammad's mosque in Medina and the Mecca, the cube, and everything that goes around the cube for people in the world to visit it. So the bin Laden family was a huge construction, and actually a great family, right? A great family. Osama bin Laden's trouble comes from his connections, I think, to the Iranian part of his family, to the Shia part of his family, because that's where you get this Muslim Brotherhood connection. That's where you get all of this division. That's where you start getting into the connections to the city of London, to the propagandists. Remember, the Muslim Brotherhood come from Egypt. Egypt, they were handed as a peace deal when Zawahiri and the Muslim Brotherhood started. The United Kingdom gave them the radio, gave the communist Muslim Brotherhood Islamists control over the radio as like a parting gift for peace. That's where the stuff started to get spread. That's where all the brainwashing started to get spread. That's where the division came in. And there's only one way to beat this division. These guys were the financial masters of the world before. That is how they created this divisive system. So the only way out is to create the financial system of the future, to beat them economically, because incentives mean everything. Again, I'm no expert in oil, but how was I able to predict that the oil situation in the Strait of Hormuz would be more or less resolved today? Now, it might not be. Again, I'm just going on financial incentives. I'm running out of battery here for some reason. I'm just going on financial incentives and financial flows and that kind of stuff, but it looks like I'm right. And I don't think you're going to see any more huge explosions there. I think you're just going to see, well, you're going to see a bit more drama just to end it. You've got to have the closing curtains. Trump threatening those closing curtains today. Looks like the big bomb they dropped yesterday was not really the answer. But you're going to see more of it, I'm sure. Or I'm not sure, but maybe. But the point is, most of it, I think, is over, and we're not going to have these catastrophic economic situations. That was the point, to create the psychological fear over those things. But truthfully, the real fight is around the new economic system. That's why it's not a coincidence that I believe that most of this is done when Trump gets control of the Federal Reserve. That's the event horizon for these sludge people. When Trump has control of the Federal Reserve and he drops interest rates to nothing, he's going to force all the other governments in the world to do the same. And he is going to issue a bit bond. Once he issues a bit bond, once you have this new economic instrument where you really see Bitcoin at the core of the American system, you're going to actually have the scenario where this whole world comes together around winning. We get rid of all of this psychological malaise. We start getting serious about understanding our history. We rewrite our history. This is why I say history is as fake as you can imagine. Once the prevailing mythology of an era runs out of steam and can't keep people together and breaks apart, like our World War II consensus, you're going to have a complete rereading of history. You're going to go through history and change and recast stories. You're going to recast Israel. Like I said, I think you're going to see a world, and this is what I always tell my Arab friends in the Gulf Coast. One day you're going to see why the Jews are some of the biggest victims, why Israelis are some of the biggest victims of this psychological war. The country was designed not like America, a bunch of founding people went and created a place, or Japan, which was an island with an ethnic homogeneity that made it natural to have a country there. It was created for the purposes of war and division and psychological manipulation, to make sure there was a focus point where you can create the fake prison of two ideas, Islam and Israel, Islam and Judaism, and you could get people to fight in perpetuity while not noticing what was really going on in the world. And I believe that as we rewrite history, you're going to have enough Muslims in the Gulf Coast that understand what happened and will be sympathetic to their plight and will be sympathetic. And that is the predicate, I believe, on which Israel will perpetuate into the future, that you will finally have people understanding what the history was, why it happened the way it did, and you'll actually have people start to have empathy for the people there. Not just that peace is good for business like Saudi Arabia or UAE is saying right now, but that there's a real reason to support Israel as a country going forward. And as a people going forward, there'll be real empathy that will be cultivated from this. And it's why the psychological war is so important, and why the psychological war will allow us to rewrite our history and to reinterpret our history. And it's already starting. You're seeing people talk about Nixon, right? Richard Nixon was one of the most popular presidents in American history until the deep state and its surrogate, the media, tore him apart, and they've never stopped. There's nothing more dangerous than a genuinely popular president. Elites give us these pay-for-play morons who don't have enough self-awareness to suffer imposter syndrome. And that's just it, right? They killed Kennedy. They tried to kill Trump. Teddy Roosevelt always stood out to me. I walk by his birthplace often. And indeed, I've walked by his birthplace. I went for dinner there once in New York City and saw the beautiful plaque outside. I think it's on 34th Street or something. Or around Koreatown. And so when you think about history being rewritten and indeed having these popular presidents, remember, that's what Teddy Roosevelt was afraid of. Teddy Roosevelt was fighting a war about these financial systems. That's what he made his successor, Taft, promise to do. Taft became president after him. Taft was supposed to never allow a Federal Reserve. That was the deal. Teddy Roosevelt went off to Africa for a couple of years, hunted for the Smithsonian, sent back all the big game that he caught, and those are all still the taxidermied animals you see in the Smithsonian. And when he heard that Taft had gone back on his promise to forbid the creation of a bank cartel, he came back and ran as the Bold Moose Party third candidate, got shot in the belly, came in second, split the Republican vote. Again, you see why it's important to split the Republicans. That's how the entire Federal Reserve was created. It was created by division within the Republican Party, and it will die through the failure of division within populism and MAGA. Teddy Roosevelt was a MAGA guy. Teddy Roosevelt was a populist. Teddy Roosevelt was exactly recognizable to the Trump era. He comes from the 1890s politically. He comes from McKinley, who Trump is always citing. The true division right now within the Republican Party is the only fight that matters. The mentally ill Democrats don't count. The mentally ill don't count. And so you don't even bother debating with them. Mostly they're just being prompt engineered and are coming up with their own hallucinations. And so they're not really bringing political points forward. The actual fight right now is this psychological division happening, and there's only one way to win it. It's making money and creating and building and having economic success. That is what will do it, and that's what Teddy Roosevelt tried to do. Unfortunately, he lost, and the folks that won did bring economic success. So that's what got everyone on their side. They brought the Roaring 20s. They brought the World War I win. But that system doesn't work anymore. The entropy is set into this Federal Reserve system. It's gone on for too long, and now we're at a point where it doesn't work anymore. But we have this huge energy revolution. We have Bitcoin. We have the signs that the old system can't sustain much more of this. And we have a new system on offer. And this time we do have a leader who is not going to fall prey to what Nixon fell prey to. who is not going to be, I don't know, he might be assassinated, which would suck. But we've learned enough from him. He's modeled enough of this stuff that we'll have a chance. Here's Nixon, we're already sort of reinterpreting. This is the famous time when Nixon went out of the White House at around 4 a.m. and hung out at the Lincoln Memorial with a bunch of protesters and had an incredible conversation with them. And I've known about this conversation for a long time. As you know, I'm a huge Richard Nixon fan, have known forever that it was fake news what happened to him with Watergate. And this particular anecdote about Nixon was always one of my favorites. And in this anecdote, Nixon talks a lot about, talks with these young people, and he makes predictions about the future. He talks to them about travel and how important travel is, and why the world, why travel in a world that's shrinking so quickly. And he describes the world, what it will be like when these people are older, and how much smaller it's about to get, and how important it is to stay cohesive and proud about being American while the world shrinks, because that American spirit, that entrepreneurship, that go out and build, is probably the only thing that is going to keep this world, as it gets smaller, to be able to go forward. Americanism will affect the entire world. And so he tells them, go and travel, go and experience these things. He says, don't bother with Europe. Right? Imagine how prescient he was in the 1970s like this, to say, Europe is already it's old, don't care. Go to Asia, he said, right? Go to these places and experience what that is like, and experience what's going on. He talked here about opening up China and how important that was going to be to open up China, which he ended up doing, of course. This is before he did it. You can see that Nixon had to be destroyed. He was just going to be too effective promoting the American system, getting to the bottom of what happened to Kennedy, getting to the bottom of the coup that happened in 1963. And so now leadership is being reestablished. He was probably the last president, probably, right? Ford was fake. Reagan probably fake, didn't know really what was going on. Clinton, obviously, George Bush Jr., George Bush Sr., scams. Real presidents in the sense that they were actually powerful, but they weren't your presidents. They were working for this system. They were working for the same system that had no problem hiding the Kennedy assassination, that had no problem hiding the Nixon assassination, character assassination, and proved themselves to be anti-Trump the minute he came out, because of what he exposed and what he began the process of changing, which is this whole financial system. So you're seeing history replay itself in a lot of ways, and you're going to be going back into the future or back into time to reinterpret the future. And indeed, it's why I continue to believe that storytelling is going to emerge in the next little while as one of the most important things, because we're going to have to reinterpret all of our history. Every movie that we've done operated with this World War II consensus. Every story we've had has been from the World War II consensus point of view. The World War II consensus is going to be proven to be a psyop and fake. And that most of what we understand that happened in World War II, including Israel, the fall of the Ottoman Empire that happened just before, but that set up the world we're in today, all of that stuff is going to be reinterpreted for a new Nakamoto consensus worldview. And the worldview we're going to reinterpret history will, I think Nixon is one of the first candidates to get reinterpreted as we move into this new world. And it's just going to continue. We're going to reinterpret almost everything we see, which is why I think you're going to see a reinvigoration of entertainment in media and in storytelling. And here it's already started. The demand we have for it is big. Here's Andrew Klavan, who interviewed this guy, Clifford Duncan, a thespian, saying, a heartbreaking interview, a major talent squelched by leftism, but he's fighting back. The canceled Broadway actor bringing Thomas Sowell to the stage. Clifton Duncan, our stagnating art and entertainment is a bipartisan problem. The left exiles creatives who won't conform, but the right provides no place for them to go. 30 minutes with Andrew Klavan on liberal authoritarianism, conservative Philistinism, and why I'm becoming Thomas Sowell. So Thomas Sowell is another one of those characters that is going to be re-articulated, reinterpreted, and he, I believe, will become a huge one of these guys who becomes way bigger. He's still alive, but he'll become bigger in his retirement / death than he ever was in real life. Bitcoiners have always recognized Thomas Sowell's brilliance, and I think it's going to happen. And you know, you're gonna have this appetite for stuff because the tools are there. This is what the economic revolution is all about. I mean, look at this quality of the movies that AI is going to help us create now. Look at these. This is just, you know, everything is computer, but computer isn't everything. And you've got Mark Andreessen saying, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I'll play it for you. So Trump just happens to embody all of this, you know, even everything is computer. That's him, right? It's a cultural phenomenon that's about to occur in America, driven by all of this innovation and this new system that is coming into place that is energy efficient or energy abundant, and that has Bitcoin at its core in order to change incentives, to change dynamics. And you're going to get the stories told by these people. It's not going to be the people with the mental illness saying, oh, no, Israel controls Trump, or, oh, forever warmongers, or, oh, racists. None of this stuff is going to handle it because there's new stories coming. People want to win. They don't want to be miserable. They don't want to be miserable. They want to have a good end to the story. They want a third act. They want to be entertained. They want all of the stuff. The world is changing quick because of this entertainment. You know, this video, compare it to what we had. This is what the system is fighting against. It's fighting against Stephen Colbert. All right. This is how starved we are for entertainment. Stephen Colbert's Late Show Goodbye is becoming an ego trip. Colbert deserved better treatment from CBS, but watching one person beam while receiving laurel after laurel doesn't make the argument for his show's relevance. Frankly, it's not very good TV, and for this relentlessly political host, not in touch with the concerns of people who have been tuning into the Late Night Show, it's for its political perspective. This is what he's up to. Think if this is this funny? Is this what people want? I think the audio is not working, so I'm going to start this one over. Man, I wish this thing would work. Weird software, huh? Watch how uniquely unfunny this is.
I imagine that as a war correspondent for many years, part of the job is to convey to those of us who aren't there the tragedy and the horror that is war, and that requires, to a certain level, not being desensitized to it yourself. And that must be harder at some times, especially when now violence is being so celebrated in odd ways by our own Pentagon press office. They recently put out a video where they used clips from Call of Duty to do sort of a triumphal celebration of the destruction of Iran. As someone who's been to so many of these conflicts and seen the reality for humans on the ground, what's your reaction to that sort of the glitz and the glamour they're trying?
So it's a zero. It's just no persuasion, no winning. And it's why this thing is coming to an end, and why you're going to see the golden age come into view now. It's happening now. I don't even have to say in the future. We're seeing it now. This stuff has no persuasive ability. No one's following it anymore. The only game left in town is dividing Trump fans. And I don't believe that's going to work, because just look at what we're about to experience. Again, I think we're going to see way more declassification come out over the next few months. I think we're going to get to the bottom of 9/11. I think we're going to get to the bottom of it. I think we're going to get the truth, or something like it. And, you know, young Tommy says the false flag is going to be wild this time. How many buildings are going to disintegrate from drone strikes this time? I don't think any. I think that we're even better going to find out what happened last time. I think we're going to get the truth or something similar to it. And we're going to at least get the insight that we need to have the conversations. We might not get it fed to us in with a spoon, but we're going to, just like with JFK. I mean, I don't need anyone else to tell me what happened to JFK. I think I know. I think enough people know more or less what happened, that we had a coup, that we lost civilian control of the military, and that we've been fighting ever since to get it back, and that we now have it back. And so, again, go to see what, and then just interpret what Trump has done and understand that you're going to find out that there was indeed, since the assassination of Kennedy, an operation that became live to take back control of the civilian command structure in the U.S. military, and that it's been operating clandestinely since JFK was assassinated. And that I do believe, in fact, that this operation that's been around to get back will become one of the stories, one of the most rallying, unifying stories out there. I think the next little while anyway, especially through the summer and all of what I think is winning coming over the next few months, all of that is going to be an important base to reunify people and to get this psychological division out of the way. I think we're pretty close now, and it's just a matter of time before we get the story and the narrative that will indeed get everyone on board with the golden age. Not everyone, as we know, as COVID proved to us. Some people are probably unsalvageable. Some people are probably absolutely too brain rotted from all the stuff that they've consumed, that they're not going to be able to get through this. But I do believe that all this division you see on the Republican side and with Trump's own mandate will go away because of the winning. And the winning will be felt both in Bitcoin and in energy circles and in builders and in people who, and even just people who want to be entertained with good quality stories, which were completely destroyed by all of this mockingbird system that we've fallen into, all of this psychological malaise that we find ourselves in. So again, I think just to summarize everything from today, I think going back to the beginning, experts are retarded. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm not an expert in anything to do with oil and gas and war, yet I was able to look at just a few of the economic indicators, the customer base of Iran, who's going through the Strait of Hormuz, what's going on with oil markets, and have said that there's nothing really that can happen after this. There's no more damage that can be done. We're at the limit of damage that can be done to the oil markets. We've already mostly priced in and absorbed the trouble. It's not that bad and totally solvable problem-wise. People were worried about farming. Well, guess what? Nobody's buying fertilizer right now. This is when you put the plants in. This is when you get your inputs. They've already bought their fertilizer. They're planting now in a lot of places, or just about to plant. It's not like they're like, oh shit, I need fertilizer. Most people have it for this year. The problem with fertilizer will probably be in the global south, or not the global south, the actual south, the southern hemisphere, in the autumn when they have their spring. So I bet you some of those folks don't have it, but we can get it there. That's plenty of months. No one's ever died of a slow motion train that they can see coming, right? That's not how you die. If you see a slow motion train and you're in the tracks, you can get out of the way. There are things you can do. So I don't think that's going to happen. It looks like the economics here are pointing to the end, and it looks like we're going to get our golden age right in time. And we got Hank here. Speaking of right in time, how you doing, Hank?
I'm doing great. I hear there's a golden age on the way. I'm excited and enthusiastic about the world.
Well, we must be. We must be. We must be.
You're rubbing off on me in the best way possible.
My prediction about Iran looks true. No more Strait of Hormuz stuff. It looks like boats are passing through. It looks like the condition of permission was granted to both the Indians and the Chinese. And so I don't think you're going to see any more trouble in the Strait of Hormuz. I think things are about to calm down, and oil markets have already priced it in. And so I think we're on a good path. Things can happen. We're in the fog of war for sure, but for the last 2 days anyway, it looks like we're on everyone looking for curtains to claim they won, and everyone has their narrative to say they won, and we're getting the bad scenario, we're getting the Venezuela scenario, but better than the ugly scenario, and better than a lot of other scenarios. So
whatever brings oil down. I paid $6 for gas the other day. I scootered to work this morning. I took out my Razor scooter and
nothing can help you guys. Okay, no Iranian thing. Nothing is going to help California. No. You're on your own. You're on your own.
Yeah, it's the price we pay for beauty, I guess. It's very expensive out here. It's
the most beautiful place, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, our geography is really great. So, what else have you guys been chatting about in the show today, Nolan?
Well, we just did a little bit on the future of, let's say, media and movies. You know how I like to do my AI connections. There was a pretty interesting interview yesterday by a guy named Clifford Duncan, who is a thespian. He was a longtime New York Broadway guy. And he did an interview yesterday with Andrew Klavan on the Daily Wire, basically saying, look, the problem that I've had as an artist, he said, is that, the left excommunicated me. They wouldn't let me do theater because I was a MAGA supporter in New York. But then the right are Philistines. They didn't want to hear my art or my point of view. So that was also a problem. So now he's doing a play on Broadway about Thomas Sowell. And Thomas Sowell, of course, is a huge hero amongst the Bitcoin community, someone who I believe is going to be reinterpreted for history's sake and will be much bigger he's still alive, but he's a very old fella. But he'll be a bigger sort of myth going forward. And I said, it's part of what we're about to do. And he what happened? We have this with content lack of it, right? I mentioned how Colbert is so not funny right now, and then all night shows are just no one's tuning in. They don't do it. They don't move it in any way. But there's appetite to be entertained, and so when you look at the ability that we'll have to reinterpret history, that's going to be one of these things. Because when you change eras, most of the era that we just lived through was like World War II consensus. Nazis always bad. Always the same storyline, more or less. And I gave the example, of course, of Richard Nixon today. People are starting to realize what a hero Richard Nixon really was, and how Watergate was mostly fake news and mostly related to Kennedy. You couldn't have a leader that popular. Did I tell you the story once about how Bill Murray knew that Watergate was fake?
I don't think so.
It's a great story. Bill Murray was on Joe Rogan, and Bill Murray mentioned that when Belushi died in New York, just a few years later, the Watergate author, was the author of the Belushi biography, because they're from the same town near Chicago. I don't remember the name of the town, but from the same town. Yeah. And so Bill Murray takes out the book and reads the first paragraph and realizes, wait a minute here, the same guy, Woodward and Bernstein, right? I think it was Woodward, wrote this biography about Belushi, but it was all bullshit. Like, everyone from Chicago who went through Belushi's apartment basically got a couch to sleep on. He helped a lot of people and was never like a drug addict. He was not like a Chris Farley guy. None of that was true, right? So he ends up, and Woodward and Belushi were from the same. He wrote the biography, but it was so stupid and not accurate that literally Bill Murray book and goes, "Oh my God, Watergate was fake," and was able to decipher that that's what happened. So, I think you're gonna. I was mentioning a famous story of Nixon before he was reelected to the most popular presidency in the history of America. Right, the '72 election is the greatest victory that a president has ever had. He only lost Massachusetts. He won every other state. And so Nixon in '72, which is why he can't continue. It's just he's too powerful. And so Nixon ended up at that time, just before he was reelected, had that famous 4 a.m. visit to the Lincoln Memorial. He left the White House and just went on his own, walked with the driver brought him, and then walked around the Lincoln Memorial. And there was people protesting. And they were there all night for some big protest the next day, and he went and just chatted with them all. And it's sort of a famous moment where he just talked to them about, you know, the world they're going to grow up in and what it's like, and traveling, and the world's about to get small, and the biggest thing you can bring to the world is your American optimism. Not everyone in the world has that, but you should go and see the rest of the world, but always remember that your optimism in a much smaller world is going to be way more effective, and that as the world shrinks, the optimism of America is probably the most important resource that we've got, and encouraged everyone to travel. And it was a great conversation. People took a bunch of pictures. So I'm predicting here, because you're already seeing it, Nixon being reinterpreted for history. A lot of the Trump ecosphere is understanding what an interesting person Nixon was. And I think you're going to get a whole reading of history. So new stories, new narratives, everything's got to be reinterpreted. You know? Entertainment is coming back.
Yeah, the real question, though, Nolan, for me is, because I'll have a few minutes in between your show and mine, is what bet on Polymarket should I be making this morning? That's what I need to know.
I believe the war is, there's no more. There's no more. There might be one
more. The war is no more.
The war is no more. Yeah, the Iran thing's done.
It's got a nice ring to it. Maybe they should run on that. I like it. Well, we got to get rolling on our show in just a bit, Nolan, so I'm going to let you finish up here. Thank you, as always. We'll see you on Tuesday, and enjoy your weekend, my friend.
Who's on the show? Let's pump it.
Ooh, we got a couple good ones. Yeah, we have, I believe it's a journalist from Iran is going to be talking with us about the situation there, so I'm excited to get some more info on that. And then in our second hour today, we're going to be joined, of course, I co-host with Walker America, which is always great. I love that. And then we're also going to be joined by Bill Conroy. He's an investigative journalist who's going to be talking to us about what's going on in Mexico. They got like 100,000 security people for the World Cup coming up, and, you know, with the cartel violence, it should be interesting. So we're excited. We got an exciting show today.
Amazing stuff, Hank. I'm interested in that World Cup story for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I love soccer, so, you know.
You have a great weekend, and I'll see you Tuesday.
As well, buddy. Cheers. See you Tuesday. Bye.
All right, there you heard it from our friend Hank. Oh, we're late. All right, everyone. Gonna get wealthy if you're gonna justify living in Cali. Yeah, there you go. What a great show today, Nolan. Thanks for taking perspective on the weekend with a lot more knowledge and perspective. There you go. I hope you're right, Nolan. Some of the truther communities I'm in are turning into such doomers. No, we're going to win. But then again, they're not Bitcoiners, so they have some retardation. Indeed, everyone, it looks like we are going to win. Who knows? But that's what I think. All right, everyone, I'm about to play the logo and followed by the thanks for watching. I want to say thanks for watching. I'll let you know about the Canada show on X if it's happening. Peace.